So I've got a 2-weeker. It's so awesome, you can't cram it into just one. Yes. So I'm going to talk till like 12:30, and then we'll do it again. So I've titled it, What's Your Story? So today's word is story. So there'll be a lot of things going on this Christmas, and one of the things we always tell is the Christmas story, right? But story was the word that kept going on and on over in my head. Anybody know what these are called? The Gospels, right? What does gospel mean? Good news. What's the good news? Jesus. This is good. Y'all are nailing it. Because usually when H asks questions, like y'all just stare at him. So I'm either asking easier questions or you like answering me. So I'm going to think B. Woo! All right, just a couple of verses like to go with this, right? The kingdom of heaven has come near. Jesus, kingdom of heaven is near. That's part of the good news. Take heart, I've overcome the world. Right? Good news. Like when we talk about the good news, when we talk about salvation, when we talk about all those things, like this is what we're talking about. Kingdom of heaven is near. Behold, I have overcome the world. That's great news. Behold, I am making all things new. Amazing news, right? This is the good news. So why are there 4 of them? Harder question. Harder question. Perspectives. I heard something else over here. Nothing? Okay. Say again. 4 different people, 4 different perspectives, 4 different audiences, right? So I stole this from Walk Through the Bible, or Walk Through the New Testament. It is supposed to be THRU. I didn't misspell that. Like that's how they do their thing. They talk about it has greater evidence. So 4 independent sources, right? All saying the same thing. Greater elaboration. So different people talking about it, you get more insight to what's going on. Greater explanation. So again, more. There's clarification from one, like somebody tells the story, somebody else tells the story, you get a little bit more detail around it, right? Greater elaboration, greater explanation, and greater emphasis. This is a big deal. So where a lot of the stories in the Bible, I think all the other stories in the Bible, you get 1 shot at, right? This one you get 4 shots at it. Why? Because it's that important. Because it's good news. So somebody was reading my notes, or they're just really smart. So there are 4, and they all talk a little bit differently. So I'm going to take a few minutes at the beginning just to kind of throw some things at you so that you can kind of get a perspective of these 4 talks. So Matthew, written by Matthew, he was a Jew, he was a disciple, he was a tax collector. It was written by a Jew to the Jews. That's real important because when you read Matthew, you see a lot of as it was foretold, like the scriptures say. This is what was happening. This is what was coming. Remember when you read this in the Old Testament, right? He's talking to Jews. Remember when you read this in your Bible? This is where it actually came true. Like this is why Jesus is who he is. The genealogy in it traces Jesus all the way to Abraham. Why Abraham? Jew, right? Father of the Jews. So everything makes sense when you look at it from the Jewish perspective. The Christmas story, you know which Christmas stories are in Matthew? There's basically 2. One is Joseph accepting Jesus as his child. See, Jewish perspective. And the Magi, the kings coming from another place, right? Kings, Right? So Matthew is about the Jewish, to the Jewish. Jesus is king. Mark was written by Mark. These are not tricky questions. The tricky question is, how many of these are disciples? I hear 2, I hear 3. What's the answer? 2, Matthew and John. So Mark was a disciple of Peter. So this is basically Peter's story. This is basically Peter's gospel. And so it was written to the Romans, and there's no genealogy because Peter just starts. He dives right in and does what he always does. And then, like you read the book and it's like just action. Totally Peter. So there's no genealogy. There's no Christmas story. But it's Jesus as a servant. Is Jesus doing things? So you've got Jesus as king, Jesus as servant. 2 totally different perspectives, right? But wait, there's more. Luke was a Gentile, meaning non-Jew. He was a physician. He traveled with Paul. This guy is like, it reads more like a biography that we're used to, right? Tells the story in order, lays it out, sets up all the characters, right? His Christmas story has John the Baptist's Christmas, like his birth story too, right? So because he's setting up all the characters, right? You have to watch the miniseries, so you have to hear about each of the different characters. So Luke sets all this up. So he's writing to a Jewish leader, writing to a Gentile leader, laying it out so they would understand the chronological piece of it, right? There's lots of interactions with people who are non-Jews, right? Because he's establishing Jesus as not just for the Jews, he's establishing him for everyone. Where does his genealogy go back to? Adam. Why? Because it's for everybody. It's not a Jewish story. It's an everybody story. And their Christmas story has all that fun stuff, right? Mary, John the Baptist, the shepherds, right? Which would not be included in a Jewish one because shepherds were down here, right? But Luke emphasizes Mary, a female, right? Her story. He emphasizes the shepherds, the bottom of the totem pole, their story, right? So totally different perspective. So Jesus is the perfect man in this one. And then there's John. So John was written way later. The church is already becoming established. It's starting to happen. You're starting to get people, Jews and Gentiles now together. You're starting to get some bad theology working into the baby good theology, right? So you've got all that, like this is happening, this is starting. And John kind of stands up and says, my turn. All the other disciples are probably dead at this point. He lived a long, long time. The church got going. John stood up and said, my turn. So his is more of a theological book. His is more of a knowledge, right? So I'm trying to tell the Jesus story, but I'm not telling you to say, here are the 4 things that happened. I'm telling you how this happened, right? So what's his Christmas story? Yeah, it's not really a Christmas story. What's his genealogy? None. It starts with, which arguably could be the Christmas story or could be the birth story, right? Or could be his genealogy. It starts with, in the beginning was God. And the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and everything happened. And then the Word came and dwelt among us, tabernacle, right? Emmanuel. So his is more of that, like, take it back to God. Jesus was there with God at the beginning. then he came in to be with us when this happened, right? So it's kind of a Christmas story, and it's kind of a genealogy story, but his is more of that, like, you've got to think and work your way through. Jesus in this one is the Son of God. So you've got these four perspectives: the king, the servant, the Son of God, and the perfect man. Like two sets of total opposites things. Which brings me back to the original question: why are there four? Makes a little more sense, right? But I'm not that fancy. I said all those words. I think there's almost a point to where it's just, you had these four guys telling their story. They were writing what they knew. This is the Jesus I ran into. This is Jesus I read about. This is Jesus that affected me. This is the things that happened to me. These are the things I saw. So two of them directly from disciples. One from Mark was Peter's disciple, so right there, right? And then Luke went and did all the research because he's heard all these stories. People have heard all these stories, so he wanted to tell it. So they were telling their story. We look back with theological eyes and we see all this fancy stuff that I laid out, because that's how amazing God is. And these guys writing their stories, you see these four different perspectives, and you see even more, and you get even more. But even the leaders of the church looked at these guys and said, it's amazing. They must have been with Jesus because they're just regular, unschooled men. Like, they didn't have all this knowledge. They didn't have all this background that we have. But you can tell they've been with Jesus. So this is the part of the sermon where I flip it around on you, right? Most preachers just slide it in there, but I'm going to warn you. I don't think you can read and study something important, the Bible or anything, right? I don't think you can read and study something that's really important and not do something with it, not do something with the information. When I learn something new, when I learn a new trivia piece, I don't keep that to myself, right? I'm usually trying to tell somebody else how smart I am, right? If I learn how to play the guitar, I want to show you that I can play it. When I am good at a sport, I want to show you that, right? When there's something important that comes in, I want to share that with others. I want to share that with people, right? I think this is the same way it is with the Bible, which is funny because people are quick to tell trivia, but slow to tell Bible stuff. But I think it's because we have this, like, this is where the people's past or what people have been told or done or with them before, like that. This is one of those things I want to shed right now. Because I think there's this scaredness or this fear, but I have to tell it just right? If I'm going to talk about the Bible, I need to talk about it just right. I have to say the right words. I can't mess up. It'll turn somebody away, or they'll be burning in hell because I said Abraham instead of Adam, right? Like, there's all this pressure to say the thing right. And I want to just erase all of that. I want to talk about you telling your story. Now, in some ways, we're always telling our story, right? Always be prepared to give an answer. Oh, they're backwards. Let your light shine before others so they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. There's a point at which we're always telling our story, right? That old phrase, share the gospel, and when needed, use your words, right? We're always telling our story. The things we do, the things we say, how we act, how we treat people, who we spend time with or don't spend time with. they all speak to the things that drive us. And when you look at someone's life, you can see what drives them. You can see the things that are most important to them. I talked about identity a few sermons ago, right? That identities are like when you find your identity, you drive after that. Like that, all of your other answers, all of your other choices come through that identity. So at some level, we're always telling our story, especially when we identify ourselves, right? When someone says, I can cook, what's the next thing that's going to happen? People are going to be watching the next thing you bring to see if you really can cook, right? And sometimes that answer is, I'll take care of the cookies this time, thanks. Or, can you bring that cobbler again? It was freaking amazing. I can really fix things. Yeah, but you can break them just as easy too. Right? When you start saying things, people start watching to see what's going on. I'm a great athlete. I want to go watch that person play. I can play music. You should see Paul on the guitar. People are going to watch him play his guitar, right? Like that's that thing once you identify yourself. It's sometimes why preachers don't say they're preachers. Because as soon as you say that, like people start watching you. You can't, they have this stigma that preachers are certain ways and dress certain ways and say certain things and do certain things and don't do certain things. But I think there's also a time and a place for telling your story. So while that adage is true, we should be using words when if you have to, but use words when you have. There are times when you have to use your words, right? I think most of the time we're serving, we're loving, we're interacting with people, and people see there's a difference. We should be able to tell them why that difference is. So when I did this sermon a few weeks ago, I did this verse, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. Remember, I spent more time on the gentleness and respect. So I'm going to highlight that again in everything we talk about with gentleness and respect. But it says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope you have. So I think there's a time when you're supposed to talk about it. There's a time when you should say, this is why I do what I do. This is my identity and this is why. But it needs to be your story. So the holidays come up, you're with family, you're with friends. There's always the, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food or food question, right? So you have to have that answer ready, right? Mac and cheese, if we missed that from last week. Christmas, what's your favorite thing, right? There's all these, what's your favorites? There's all these things. So it's that you're giving an answer. This is the same thing. Same exact thing. It's your story. I would be lying if I said my favorite food was dressing. There are people who would kill me for that, right? Dressing is the thing. It's Thanksgiving, you have turkey and dressing. The rest of it is just extras. I'm like, can you just put more extra mac and cheese instead of that space that the dressing would take up? Right? That's my story. My story is mac and cheese. Your story can be turkey and dressing. My story is mac and cheese. That's where I think we get hung up in all of this. Is we try and tell the story that other people told us. Or we try to tell the story that we think we're supposed to tell. Or we try to tell the story that would make the most converts, or would make the most effect, or I need to tell it in a way such that all of you can hear me and are drawn to my story. And then you will hear what I have to say and it will change your life forever. But that's not me. That's totally not me. And that's definitely not Ashley. Right? It's definitely not Claire. I want you to tell your story. These people told the story about how Jesus affected them, what they saw, what happened around them when Jesus spoke, the feelings that happened. That's what these guys did in the Gospels. That's what I think our story is. Our story is what God is doing with us. What has God meant to you? Specifically you. Not the guy next door. Not Rusty. To you. I want you to tell your story. So a couple of hints. So going back to this one, because I think this is always important. Do this with gentleness and respect. I'm not talking to you about my story. I'm just telling you my story. Gentleness and respect. So rule number 1, tell your story. Not someone else's, not what you think you're supposed to say. Tell your story. People can smell out real and fake. 100%. They'll smile on your face and listen to you, right? But they know that you're just blowing smoke. Be real. Tell your story. Tell how God has interacted with you. Tell about the people in your life who affected you. Tell how God is growing you. Tell how God is loving you and the people in your circle. They can't argue with your story. They can't pick holes in your story. If you're quoting somebody else, you may misquote it. If you're telling somebody else's story, they may find out that it's somebody else's story, not yours, right? Which happens a lot now with the internet, right? But just tell your story. Not for something. I'm not telling my story so that you will do X. Whatever X is. I'm not trying to get you to come to my crew or serve on my team or be in and out, right? I'm telling you my story because this is what Jesus means to me. I just want you to know. Don't tell it to try and convert. Don't tell it to try and pull in, right? If someone tells you, you do stuff different. Why do you do stuff different? It's because of Jesus. Here's how he meant to me. Here's what he's meant to me. This is why I'm serving him. This is why I love on others, because of this. Great. Story told. If they ask more questions, you get to spend more time with them. Awesome, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Don't try and quote 15 Bible verses. How many of you know 15 Bible verses? Right? Jesus wept runs off the top of the tongue, but that doesn't really work into my story very well. You don't have to embellish it or be dramatic, unless that's who you are, right? If you're just that dramatic person, like you're going to tell the story a different way. But it doesn't have to be this big, huge story. Like I remember a lot of churches when you join the church, you have to fill out a form. And one of the things is tell your salvation story or tell your conversion story or right? And there's all this paper, right? You got name, address, and whatever, and then this whole paper that you're supposed to fill out with your story. We left you plenty of space. What if my story is not big and dramatic? I've been a drug dealer for 20 years. Got saved. Now I'm on the straight and narrow. That's amazing. If that's your story, that's not mine. Right? I don't need a whole page worth of stuff. I love God. God loves me. I love others. God's interacted with me in this way. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to have had all those experiences to be a Christ follower. I've talked to people who said, I felt bad telling my testimony, which is another word for saying your story. I felt bad telling my testimony because there wasn't anything bad in it. Well, there's your testimony, right? That's how God interacted with you. He didn't have to pull you back from all that stuff, right? You were in a safe space already. You realized God kept you there, and you stayed there. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. That's, again, back to telling your story. Your story is you. Let it simmer. Bless you. So I had all my godsons this week. They're all in my house, 6 boys, lots of food, lots of stuff going on, always chaos. And there's no telling what I'm going to have to clean up when I go up to their rooms, right? Now that they're all gone. Trying to train them, but you know. When I interact with my boys, like there's very, very, very few times when I say something and they go, you know what, you're right. That's an amazing idea. I'll do that. Right? Sometimes you say something like, maybe you ought to look into this. And they're like, no, that's stupid. The next week they call you and go, you know, I looked into that. Sometimes you have to let the story simmer. Sometimes you have to let the information just be out there. Like we talked about earlier, people start watching you. So when you say, I serve people, that's what I do. People will start looking. And when they see you serving people, they're going to start asking the next question. When you say, I can't go anywhere on Sunday morning, like that's me and my family time, we go to church, we hang out with all our Christian friends, or all our friends, or all those people at church. We eat a bunch of snacks, we sing songs, we encourage each other, we strengthen each other. After that time, I can go do whatever. They start watching for that. My parents wouldn't let me play soccer on Sunday mornings, and I hated them for it. Right? Because that's when all the good teams played. So you play on Sunday because the good teams play on Sunday. I want to be part of that. But I learned that this was more important than soccer. To my family, this was more important than soccer. God worked out another way for me to play. He gave me good coaches. He gave me all these things. So I ended up playing, right? But I learned the discipline of put this first and the rest will be added. We would take our boys when we had soccer tournaments out. If it was a Sunday, we would try and find whoever had the 8 o'clock service right before the tournament. Go do it. We saw some weird churches that way. Because whatever's open at 8, let's just go try it, right? And 2 white people walk in with a bunch of black kids. It's fun. But it's teaching that, like I'm teaching that on, right? That even if we have to be here, if there's a way we can go somewhere, if we can go on Saturday night service, if we can go to the early morning service, let's do that. Like this is still important. So let it simmer. Sometimes people will get it and they'll ask you right away. Sometimes it takes years. Tell your story. Tell it not to get them to do something, but just tell them because it's your story. Keep it simple. and let it simmer. Be honest, be real. Do it with gentleness and respect. Christmas is one of those times when we get together and we talk to people. People are more friendly at Christmas. People talk more at Christmas, this holiday time, because they assume everybody is of great cheer. As you're celebrating your Christmas time, H talked about Thanksgiving last week, right? Tell people thank you. Interact with people, tell them what they've done for you, right? Be ready with your answer when people say, why do you celebrate Christmas? Or why do you say Merry Christmas? Or what do you do for Christmas? Why does your family do that? Again, this is not hard. This is what Jesus has done with you, is doing with you. Not someone else, not all that. Like, tell your story your way to your people. Matthew told his Jewish story to his Jewish people in a Jewish way. And if you are a Jew and read Matthew, you understand it a totally different way than I do as a Gentile. I read Luke as a Gentile, and I'm like, why are these other guys not doing it in order? Because it doesn't make sense to my brain. My brain is set up all the characters, watch all the characters interact, here's the climax, and then what happens next. Tell your story your way. So next week, we're going to continue this. Next week, we're going to talk about how to tell your story, like actually how to do it. What I want to let simmer this week is I want you to look at your life. Honestly, look this week. Why are you here on Sunday morning? Why do you come to your small group? Why do you serve? Like, why will you be there on Saturday morning to serve people in the freezing cold? Why do you do that? If someone asked you why you did that, what would you say? But I really want you to take this week, so your job this week, your homework. Why do you do what you do? I don't have a story. I can't figure it. That's fine. We're going to talk about that. We're going to put some pieces together. I'm going to teach you different ways to do this. What I want you to do is think this week. What's my story? Why do I do this? Why do I come here every Sunday or every other Sunday or once every month? Like, why do I do this? Understand? Y'all good for that? All y'all online, do that. Next week, we'll do something with that.